So, okay. So our next speaker is Rolando, and he's going to be speaking about rent to own. So rent to own, he has a huge back end of knowledge. He's been doing this since 2004. He's purchased properties pretty much across Canada, from New Brunswick to British Columbia. So we're super excited to have him up here talking about rent to owns. I know a lot of people come in when we do an intake meeting about how to do it. So we're super happy. Please give me a giant round of applause for Rolando.
Thanks, Adrian. I just wanted to start off by congratulating James and the whole Mogul Realty team for your recent award, and you guys are doing such an amazing job educating and supporting the real estate investors community. So a big hand for the Mogul Realty team. So how are you guys doing? Good? Is the energy level still up? I hope so, because my presentation is about 450 slides. So I hope I'll go through the presentation quick, but no, just kidding. It won't be that long. So yeah, I'd like to start off. I love this quote by Robert Kiyosaki: "You get one life, live it in a way that inspires someone." So for me, it's been always. I think we really need to dig deep inside ourselves and find out what is it that motivates us and what is it that inspires us and what we can do to motivate others and inspire others. So for me, it's been always my family. And actually, I have the opportunity that my family is here with me tonight. So my wife is here, Lillian, which is not only my partner in life, she's also my business partner, and my daughter Claudia is also here, so which is a blessing for me. So thank you. Yeah, so a little bit about me. Again, my name is Rolando Davilia. I'm originally from Venezuela. My family and I moved to Canada in 2004. My background is in civil engineering. And as soon as I graduated from university, my passion was always construction, and I always wanted to work in construction, but in large-scale projects. So as soon as I got off university, I went and I got a job with a very large construction company, and I started working my way up from there. So I had 25 years of experience in construction management. 14 of those back home in Venezuela and 11 here in Canada. 20 out of those 25 years in management positions where I had the opportunity to manage very large scale multidiscipline projects in the oil and gas industry. But what happened was that a few years ago I realized that it didn't matter how good I was at what I did and how good my job and my income was. It is extremely difficult and very risky to only depend on one source of income. So a few years ago, my wife and I started thinking, okay, we can't have only our jobs and be depending on our jobs. So we decided a few years ago that we needed to do something, and we wanted to do something different. But with having a background in engineering, both of us actually, so we got trapped in that, paralysis analysis, and we were going in circles trying to find the perfect opportunity, which never came. So a few years went by, and we did nothing. We were comfortable, and we didn't do much. So finally, in 2014, we said, well, you know what, we definitely need to do something. We held ourselves accountable to it, and we went out there and we tried to find something else to do. So we came across this individual that eventually he became our mentor, and we explained to him that what we were looking for was finding ways to create different and additional income streams. And fair enough, so with his help, we created an asset development plan. And basically, when we created that plan, we realized that we needed to create multiple different things and create different income streams. One of them being real estate. So we said, okay, perfect. So if we want to do real estate, that's great. But then we didn't want to do it without having the proper education. So we decided to go and get educated first. So we started looking around. We found some training. We took the training we started taking the training in summer 2014. At the same time, we incorporated our company. Fall 2014, we started looking at deals. And very early in 2015, we closed on our first deal. And shortly after that, the second one, and then the third one, and the when we went. So at that point in time, we decided that we wanted to use the rent-to-own strategy as our main focus getting into real estate. So, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight is the rent-to-own strategy. So what is it? What is a rent-to-own? So rent-to-own is a non-traditional, is an innovative strategy, real estate strategy, that is designed to help people that are motivated to buy a house. They may be tired of paying rent or whatnot. They have down payment or a good portion of the down payment. They go to the bank, they apply for financing, and the bank says, I'm sorry, we can't give you a mortgage right now. So then the rent-to-own is an option for them. And how it works is basically similar to leasing a vehicle. I'm pretty sure that most of you have either leased a vehicle before or are currently leasing a vehicle or know someone that have leased a vehicle at some point in time. So basically you go to a car dealership, you pick a vehicle, bless you, you pick the vehicle, then you agreed on the term, you agreed on the payments, and you start enjoying your vehicle, you start driving your vehicle, and at the end of the term, you have an option to either purchase that vehicle or give it back to the dealership. So the rent, when it comes down to properties, the rent-to-own is very, very similar. The big difference between leasing vehicles or leasing homes is that vehicles depreciate over time, while houses appreciate over time. So why rent-to-own for us? And that's something that we thought about at the beginning, and we were really thinking what strategies will help us to grow our business faster. And at that point in time, we were looking at two different things. One, we wanted cash flow, because cash flow is key, and we wanted to really start making cash flow as soon as possible. But the other thing is that we were also looking for quick cash strategies, because we wanted to start creating more cash so that we could continue investing. So the rent-to-own strategy actually allows you to get both, because you get a much higher cash flow in a monthly basis than that you will normally get with a regular rental, and but also because you turn around that house and sell it to your tenant buyer in 2 or 3 years, then you make a good lump sum amount at that point in time. So it's kind of combination of both, and we really liked about that. The third reason why we got into rent-to-owns is because we found that it was a pretty cool strategy, and that will allow us to help people that are motivated to buy and they can't. And the reason why we were motivated by that is because when we first moved to Canada in 2004, we had a really hard time finding a place to rent, because we were new here and we didn't know anybody. Obviously, we didn't have a job, and I don't blame the landlords, but they were protecting their assets. So the only way that we could get a rental property is because we had to pay 6 months upfront, rent upfront. So then when we learn about this strategy, we say, well, that's a pretty cool strategy that will allow us actually to make a difference out there in the marketplace and help somebody. If we can help one family to get into a home, I think that's a win. And that's why the other reason why I decided to go with a rent-to-own strategy. So who is the rent-to-own for? Who are our clients? So basically, the rent-to-own is designed for self-employed people that maybe they haven't reported enough income. new business owners, and where the bank wants to see 2-3 years of I guess the business going before they can actually consider that person for financing. Newcomers to Canada, people that obviously are new, they don't have credit history here, and so on and so forth. People with bad credit, people that had issues and challenges with their credit, or people that simply don't have credit, because believe it or not having credit is probably as bad as having bad credit. So banks and lenders in general, they don't like people requesting loans when they don't have credit. And also when people are motivated to buy, but they don't have the whole down payment. So they have a good chunk of it, but they don't have it all. So those are kind of our customers. In terms of the strategy, you can do 1 year to 5 years. We like to do 2 to 3 years. 1 year is really difficult to do unless you already own the property, because it's hard to make the numbers work. 4 to 5 years for us is kind of very long time, because a lot of things can change in 4 to 5 years. So we kind of found a sweet spot between the 2 to 3 year mark. How it works, we collect an initial option consideration, because if the person was motivated to buy a house, they probably had the down payment. So we collect an initial option consideration up front, and that option consideration is 100% refundable, and it goes towards the down payment at the end of the term, obviously if they follow through with the purchase of the house. At the same time, a portion of the rent also goes towards the down payment. So basically, in a nutshell, the rent-to-own it works as a savings plan. It's a savings program. So where the tenant buyer is saving up the down payment towards the purchase at the end of the term. In the way we do it, we like the tenant buyers to accumulate minimum 8% of the down payment, ideally 10%. And the reason why we do that is because that's going to put them in a much stronger position when qualifying for financing. We don't know, the regulations may change in the next year or two, so that's why we use that as an extra layer of protection, so for the time that they are going to go and get their own financing. And basically what it happens, we purchase the house, and they move in. They are essentially what we call homeowners in training for the period of 2 to 3 years, and after that, they get their own financing, and we close. They purchase the house, and we close the deal. So, in terms of goals, what are the goals of the program? So the biggest goal for us is to help the tenant buyer to effectively purchase the house at the end of the term. That's the main goal, right? And at the same time, as I said earlier, so we help them to save up 8 to 10% of the down payment. From the investment standpoint, our main goal is to create sound investments for joint venture partners and investors that want to work with us, that want to participate in some of our projects. And the way we do that is by providing a much higher monthly cash flow and a much higher return on investment than what you can get with a regular a rental property. So in terms of the structure of the rent-to-own, so basically what happens is that you are going to have 2 contracts in place. So you're going to have a regular lease agreement that is similar to the one that you could use for your regular rental property, which gives the tenant the right to live in that property for 2 years or 3 years. But in addition to that, we are going to have another agreement in place, which is the option to purchase agreement, which gives the tenant buyer the right, not the obligation, but the right to purchase that house from us at the end of the term. Okay? So they don't have an obligation, but they have the right to purchase the house. So at the end of the day, if they want to walk away and they don't want to follow through, they can. The caveat to that is that the option money that they have provided is not refundable. Okay? And that's the layer of protection that we create for ourselves. That's our contingency in case that happens. Now, as any other real estate deal, there are always benefits and there are always disadvantages. So what are the benefits for the property owner or the investor in this case? So one of the biggest one is that eliminates vacancy, because now you have signed a lease agreement with a tenant buyer for 2 or 3 years. So that guarantees that that person is going to be there. So pretty much eliminates, the headache of having that property vacant. Okay. Less property management involvement, and we really love the rent-to-own from that perspective, because it's very hands-off. It's very easy to manage, keeping in mind that the tenant buyer is taking ownership of the house. It's going to be their house at the end of the term. So they take, for the most part, pretty good care of the house, and they take care of the minor repairs, maintenance, and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, it's extremely, I shouldn't say extremely, but it's relatively easy to manage and less labor intensive than a regular rental. Much higher return investments than most investments out there, because what happens is that we take the initial option consideration that the tenant buyer provides, and we use that money in full or a good portion of it towards the down payment when we purchase the house. So we take less money out of our own pocket, which means that our return investment goes drastically up. And the other thing is that you have equity growth as any other rental property. As the tenant is paying rent, your mortgage payment is being paid by the tenant, so you are creating equity from that perspective. Disadvantages, you are responsible for any major repairs that may come up, but that's not different from any other rental properties. The tenant buyer may not exercise the option at the end of the term, and that can happen, right? So sometimes, bad things happen to good people, and some circumstances, life happens to people, and they may need to walk away. And I'll talk about later on about how we mitigate that risk, but it's a risk that is there. And market may be down by the time that the tenant buyer is going to exercise the purchase, which means that he or she is going to get a lower mortgage. So it's something that we need to be aware of, we need to keep in mind, and we need to have a plan if that happens. So for the optionee or tenant buyer, what are the benefits for this person? First, they are what we call homeowners in training. So if they haven't owned a house before, they are going to be getting used to it while doing the rent-to-own. The program gives them a little bit more time to accumulate the down payment, because they are going to be saving for that down payment for 2 or 3 years. As I said earlier, they have no obligation to buy. So their option money obviously is going to be at risk, because if they walk away, they are going to lose that money. But they don't have the obligation to buy. If they get transferred, they need to move or whatever, they get a job in a different city or something like that, they don't have the obligation to buy. They can walk away. The other good thing for them is that rent is fixed. So that gives them a peace of mind that they are not going to get rent increases throughout the term. The rent is fixed from the get-go for the 2 or 3 years. The purchase price at the end of the term is set from the get-go, so there are no surprises. They don't need to worry about how much we are going to be paying for this house at the end. That's set from day one, and is stated on the option to purchase agreement. And the other thing that we do, we make our rent-to-own homes pet-friendly. So you don't have to do that. Not everybody does that, but we do it. We like to make it pet-friendly, because I know that there are a lot of animal lovers out there, and they have sometimes a real difficult time finding places, because not all landlords allow pets in their properties. So in terms of disadvantages, market may be down when it's time for them to purchase the house. The monthly rent is typically higher, because on top of the fair market rent, they are providing a monthly option consideration, which again is refundable and it goes towards the down payment, but they are paying that in a monthly basis. And typically they have a little bit more responsibility because they are taking care of all the small repairs and maintenance of the house. So no phone calls at 2 in the morning to the landlord, hey, the toilet is leaking, or we don't deal with that. They know that they have to deal with those things. And the long-term lease, they are going to be signing a 2 to 3 year lease. That obviously gives them less flexibility. So there may be, for those people that they like to move every 6 months or whatever, that may be a little inconvenient for them. But that's one of the things that we make sure at the beginning of the program, that they are, they carefully look through the rent-to-own, they understand how it works, and they carefully choose their house and the location and the neighborhood, because it's a fairly large investment. So for most people, it's probably the largest investment in their lives. So we want to make sure that the place and the neighborhood is a good fit for them, so that, say, 6 months later down the road, they don't find themselves, oh, we made a mistake, this house is too big, or this house is too small, or we don't like the neighborhood, or whatever, right? So all that is part of the initial process when we are walking them through how the program works. In terms of mitigation, as I said earlier, so it is real estate. It is a real estate transaction. There is always risk. So what we do is that obviously we try as best as we can to mitigate that risk. And the way we do it is by doing extensive due diligence. Not only from the property standpoint, but also from the tenant buyer standpoint. We spend a fairly amount of time at the beginning when we are setting up the program to properly qualify the tenant buyer and making sure that the program is a right fit for them, and that they are going to be successful in getting financing and purchasing that house from us. So I can't emphasize enough the fact that we take a good chunk of time at the beginning, making sure that the program is a right fit for that individual. In addition to that, we do quarterly inspections. So we want to go and visit them every 3 months. Not only from the property management standpoint, but more from the tenant management standpoint. In our experience, it's extremely critical to develop that relationship with our tenant buyers and do a proper tenant management. So we go and visit them every 3 months, and then from there is our judgment whether we want to continue doing it every 3 months, or we want to space those inspections out. So if we go there the first time, and then we find that there is somebody living in the basement that it wasn't supposed to be there, and then we ask, okay, so who is this person? And they say, well, no, that's my friend Joe. He came to visit us from BC, but he's going to be here 2 weeks, and he's going to be on his way. Okay, no big deal. But then that's a kind of red flag for us, right? Then we go again in 3 months, and we find that Joe is still there. And not only that Joe is still there, but they have another dog, and they have a cat, and they have a goldfish. And I say, okay, so now we know that there is a trend here, something is happening. So that allows us to keep a really close eye on how they are behaving and how they are taking care of the property and fulfilling their side of the agreement. So now, on the other hand, if we go for the first 2 inspections and everything is looking good, they are paying on time, they are keeping up the house nicely and maintaining the house well, and all is good, well, we may decide at that point in time that the next inspection we are going to do it in 6 months. But it's we from the beginning we want to set the inspections up for every 3 months, and then have the ability to space them out if we want. So we also, depending on the property, we may decide to have a reserve fund. And the way we do that is, if it is a brand new house, we know that the risk of having a major repair is lower, so we may decide not to have a reserve fund. But if the house is a little older, is 10, 15 years old, well, the possibility of that house having issues or a major repair coming up is higher. So what we do is out of the initial deposit that the tenant buyer provides, we may decide to keep a couple of $1,000 in our account so that just in case a major repair comes up, we don't have to make cash calls to the investors or whatnot. We just have additional money there to take care of that. The other thing is that the option money is not refundable. So if they decide to walk away, then that's our contingency plan. So now we have that money so that we can utilize if we need to go in and do some minor repairs, maybe we need to do some painting touch-ups or something like that. So we have that money for that. And we have enough money to cover the expenses for 2 or 3 months until we figure out what we are doing next with that property if that happens, right? And then we do extensive documentation. We document each and every step in the process just to make sure that we have, first, good communication, that everything that we have discussed with the tenant buyer there is a paper trail and everything is in writing. And we have a lot of forms that we get them to sign and agree and sign before they actually move in. And last but not least is having multiple exit strategies. So that's something that we look at from the very beginning, because you are not going to find yourself out there where you have a property, your tenant buyer is walking away, and then you find yourself, oh, what do we do with this property now? It's an acreage in the middle of nowhere, and your options are very limited. So you need to understand, you need to define what your investment criteria is, what you feel comfortable purchasing for the tenant buyer, and having the end in mind. So what can we do with that property if the tenant buyer walks away? So can we rent that property? Can we do a short-term rental? Can we do another rent-to-own? Can we just sell it, right? So you want to have that defined from the beginning, so that you know what to do if that happens. So you are not struggling trying to find out, well now what we do with this property. So in terms of profit centers, so there are actually 4 profit centers when you do a rent-to-own. So the first one is, obviously, you need to understand and you need to know the market. You need to be comfortable with the area you are going to be investing. Ideally, you want to work with real estate agents that are investors friendly, like the Mogul team, that they have access to properties that you can find out there for a little bit lower market price and so on and so forth. So you want to have money in the buy. Because as you probably know, in real estate, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. Because you don't know what the market is going to look like when you are selling that property. But you know what the market is today. So we work really hard to try to negotiate and find properties where there is actually equity going in. Second profit center is cash flow, not different from any other rental property. The difference between the cash flow here and the cash flow in a regular rental is because we are collecting a monthly option consideration, your cash flow is much higher. Because now the tenant buyer is paying $300, $400, $500 a month. So if your original cash flow was $300, $350, now your overall cash flow is $600, $700, or $800 a month, which is not bad. The mortgage pay down, as I said earlier, as the tenant pays the rent, your mortgage gets paid down. So typically in a $350,000 home, your mortgage is around $1,100 to $1,200. Probably around $500 of that is going towards principal, which means that every year $6,000 of your principal went down. So you are building equity that way. And the last one is the profit from the sale, because obviously you are selling the house for a higher amount at the end of the term. And the way we calculate that is with the help of the real estate agents. We determine what the appreciation rate in that area for those type of houses is, and then we calculate what the price of the house is going to be at the end of the term. So it's predetermined and it's set on the option to purchase agreement. So our process is a 6-step process. It's quite simple. So it all starts with marketing, and then with the tenant acquisition and qualification. The next step is to structuring the deal and defining the strategy. Next is we select the property, and we go through the acquisition process and due diligence. We purchase the house. After that, we take possession, and then the tenants move in. We do the follow-ups, what I said earlier, quarterly, and we try to stay very close to the tenants and work with them and develop a good working relationship. And at the end, they, ideally they get their own financing and they purchase the house from us. So from a marketing standpoint, there are 3 things that we are always looking for. One is tenant buyers, people that are out there motivated to buy, that they can get financing right now, and they're looking for options. We are also always looking for joint venture partners and investors that want to participate with us in some of our projects. And we are always looking for properties. So those are kind of the 3 things that we are always looking for out there. In terms of the tenant qualification, so it is a 3-step process. So first we do a consultation. It could be over the phone, and then we can have a face-to-face meeting with the tenant buyer. We walk them through the process, how it works. We try to educate them to make sure that they have a full understanding of the process. And we get them to fill out a questionnaire so that we know what they're looking for, what's important for them, how many people are going to be living in the house, how many bedrooms do they need, what else do they need in that house. And if the person is serious, is committed to move forward, then we collect a commitment fee so that we can activate the next phase, because at that point in time we need to start involving mortgage brokers and realtors and whatnot. So we collect that commitment fee, and then we get them to start working with the mortgage specialist. We collect the rest of the information, income statements, notice of assessments, all that stuff. And the mortgage broker does an assessment, and then when the mortgage broker does the assessment, there are 3 key pieces of information that we're looking for. First, we want confirmation that that person has a high rate of success in getting financing in 2 or 3 years. We want to make sure that we set them up for success. There is no point in getting somebody into the rent-to-own program if we know that there is no way they are going to qualify for financing. So that's one. Then the second piece of information that we look for is how much. How much are they going to be able to qualify for? Because that's going to determine the type of house that they can purchase today. And the last one is in how long. Do they need 2 years? Do they need 3 years to get their financing in order? From there, we define and we structure the deal. And what that is basically we try to provide the tenant buyer with 2 or 3 different scenarios. So this is how the program will look like if you purchase a house of this much, or this is how it will look like if you purchase a house of this much, if you do it in 2 years, if you do it in 3 years. So we play with all those variables, and we present them with 2 or 3 or 4 different scenarios for them to pick. Now, they pick one, and what we do, now we move to the next phase, which is purchasing the house. And while we move to that phase, we start working with the documentation. We start drafting the agreements and the rest of the forms that we need to fill out and they need to review and sign. So from the property acquisition standpoint, what we do is that we take the initial information that they provided in terms of what they are looking for, what type of houses they want to get, and we provide that information to our real estate agent. And we say, well, we have these people that they want to do a rent-to-own. They are looking for a 4-bedroom house, minimum 2 bathrooms, a double-car garage is important to them. They want the house to be fully fenced because they have a dog, so on and so forth. And then what happens is with the real estate agent go out there, go to the area where they would like to purchase that house, and find whatever properties that fit that criteria that are available in the market based on the price point that we also provided. So the realtor brings those houses to us. We, from an investment standpoint, we looked at them, and then we decide, okay, out of those 12 houses, we don't like these two, but we are okay with the other 10. So at that point in time, the realtor takes the tenant buyer out, show them the 10 houses, and the tenant buyer picks one, and that's the house that we go for. And then we start doing the due diligence process on the house. We do inspections, so on and so forth. And we start going down the road of securing financing and everything else. So at that point in time, the one thing that we are very careful of is making sure that we have collected the initial option consideration and that we have signed the agreements before we remove conditions. So we put an offer on a house and we do the inspection and everything else, but we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we remove conditions and the next day the tenant buyer says, you know what, we changed our mind, something happened, we are not moving forward, right? So you don't want to be, now your deposit is at risk. So what we do is at that point in time, we make sure that the agreements are signed, we have collected the initial option deposit, we remove conditions, and then we go from there. So we purchase the house, and then we close on it. We take possession. The one thing that we learned the hard way, the first rent-to-own that we did, we made a mistake because obviously we were eager. We wanted to give them the house the same day that we were taking possession. And fair enough, there was a delay on closing. The lender took longer than to release the funds. And we were all there at noon, the day on closing, and the realtor was there, we were there, the family was there, the movers, friends that came over to help them to move in. It was a mess. So you don't want to be in that position, trust me. It wasn't fun. We were there between noon and 4. Finally, at 4 in the afternoon, keys were released, but it wasn't a fun experience. So we learned the hard way. So now what we do is we give ourselves 2, 3, or 4 days between us taking possession and letting them to move in. So depending on the house, so if the house was occupied when we purchased it, then we give ourselves a little bit more time because there may be minor repairs, maybe painting touch-ups or stuff like that we want to make sure that we have enough time to take care of before they move in. And then we agreed on the move-in date. They come in, we tell them, allow yourself for at least an hour and a half or 2 hours. We do a very detailed walkthrough. We have a checklist, and we go room by room. We do an extensive check. We check appliances, we check everything, make sure the lights are working, electrical plugs are working, and outlets and everything. And then we sign off, and we give them the keys. So that's basically how the process goes. How are we doing on time? Good. I have a couple of examples. I'm almost done. I just have a couple of examples that I wanted to share with you tonight of 2 real life examples, 2 rent-to-owns that we completed, that we've done. So the first one, the purchase price was $330,000. So this house was listed for $339,900. We managed to get it for $330,000. When we applied for financing, actually the appraisal came out at $342,000. So actually going in, we had $12,000 equity into this property. It is a 2-year term. We collected $16,000 initial option consideration. Our initial investment was north of $46,000. The monthly option consideration is $500. Rent is $1,800, so the tenant buyer is paying monthly $2,300, and our cash flow a month is $687. So we set the sale price at the end of the term at $355,350, taking in consideration an appreciation rate of 3%. The total option consideration at the end of the term is going to be $28,000, 8% of the purchase price. And the total expected profit in this deal is $39,000 and an annual return on investment of 42%. So this house, we purchased this house in July last year, so it is a 2-year term, so they just completed 1 year and they have 1 more year to go. This one, the purchase price was $439,900. The house was listed for $449,000, so we got it roughly around $10,000 off. It was a 2-year term. We collected an initial option consideration of $25,000, which is what it was pretty healthy. Our initial investment was $93,000. The monthly option consideration $500, and the rent was $2,500. So the tenant buyer was paying $3,000 a month. Cash flow, it was $1,244, and if you're wondering if that's a typo, no, it's not. That was our cash flow, $1,244. We set an appreciation rate of 4%. The sale price was set at $475,000. The total option consideration at the end of the term was $37,000, which again is 8%. Our profit was $58,000, and the total annual return on investment was 32%. So this house, actually, we purchased this house in April 2016, and we sold it to the tenant buyers in May this year. So we closed on this one. I gotta be honest, not all the rent-to-own deals in our experience are as healthy as this one. This house was or is in Grand Prairie, so it's a little bit of a different market. That's probably why you see that the rent was so high. The other thing is that this house was a show home, so it had some additional features that a regular house doesn't have. That's why they were paying a healthy rent, monthly rent. So anyway, so those are two examples of two of the deals that we've done. And with that, that's pretty much what I had to share. Do we have time for questions? Or yeah?
I have a couple questions,
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Mike.
You're looking at the option consideration. How much are you looking to get from the buyers? Is there a percentage you're looking for, or vary?
So excellent question. So we look at different things. So we always start by trying to set them up in a way that they are going to be able to save 8 to 10% of the down payment, right? So we start working from there, and we take into consideration their monthly income, because it's not realistic to get somebody to pay $3,000 a month. Not everybody has that capacity to pay $3,000 a month in between rent and option consideration. So the lower what they can afford in a monthly payment, the higher they are going to have to provide initially, and vice versa. If they have a very high initial option consideration, then they will get a break on the monthly option consideration, because the goal is for them to accumulate 8 to 10%, right? So it's the combination of both. So we play with both. Does that answer your question? We work backwards, yes, absolutely. Any other questions? Yeah?
Do you find, like your example with Joe being in the basement and next to dogs, do you find you deal with rent-to-own tenants differently than you do with regular tenants, or is it the same?
No, from that perspective, it's almost the same, because actually our lease agreement is the same. We use the same for both, whether it's a regular rental or a rent-to-own. The only thing that we do different is that in a regular rental scenario, we collect a damage deposit. On a rent-to-own, we don't do it, because we are already collecting, for the most part, a very healthy initial deposit. So if there are some damages and they walk away and there are some damages, we have a good initial option consideration, right? So from that perspective, we treat it pretty much the same. And we, but it's all about, I can't stress enough the importance of developing that working relationship with the tenant buyer and setting them up for success from the get-go, right? making sure that they understand what they are getting into, how the contracts work, how the process works, so that they are comfortable and they know. When you set those clear expectations from the get-go, now if they start deviating and you don't visit that house for a year, well, it's probably too late, right? But that's why we go every 3 months, because we want to be early to identify any potential deviations from what we have agreed, right? And if we find something like that, then we address that immediately, right? So we don't wait 6 months or a year to address those, right? Yeah.
You ever did a rent to own with the property with a secondary suite? Who would collect the rent for that extra income on the secondary suite?
We haven't done one with a secondary suite, but the way that I will do it, that will be actually a good thing for the tenant buyer, because now that income will help that person to not only to pay probably a higher monthly consideration, but also to have a better success of getting financing at the end, because now that income is going to be taken into consideration. So it will be an excellent scenario. We haven't done one, but it will be an excellent scenario to do it that way. We had a tenant once where he lost his job, and he was having a difficult time finding a similar job, or a job with similar income to the one that he had. And what we did is we suggested to him, well, you have a room in the basement that you are not using. So if you find somebody that you feel comfortable with renting that room, that will give you a little bit of breathing room, and that's what he did. He found a friend and he rented the room, and that allowed him to get back on track. Excellent question. Maybe one more question.
So what all modifications, if any, you allow the rent-to-own buyer or renter to make in the house?
Okay, excellent question. So we don't allow them to do any structural modifications. We allow them to maybe do painting. If they want to change maybe the kitchen cabinets or something like that, we allow them to do that. But we make it very clear, and it's writing in our contract, that they can't do anything without our approval, right? So even if they want to paint, they need our approval, right? And what we do is we said, okay, you want to paint the house in a different color, that's okay. But if for whatever reason you don't follow through and you walk away, you need to pay paint the house back the way it was, right? And the same thing with any other modification. Of course, what we look for is, are those modifications going to add value to the house or not? Because if they are going to add value to the house, yeah, why not, right? Because the equity is going to go up, and if they walk away, now the value of the house increased. What we don't want to do is them to start doing structural modifications that are going to actually be detrimental to the value of the house. Make sense?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Jennifer?
Do you mind just going back to one of the examples that you gave us?
Sure.
Then I'll ask a related question there.
One or two?
Whichever one.
Okay.
So let's just say that you have a JV partner in this deal.
Yeah.
And so you have your ROI at 42%.
Correct.
Would that be half and half?
It depends. Actually, good question. So it depends on how we structure the deal. Sometimes we structure the deal at a 50-50 split. Sometimes we do something different. So each deal is different. So you can structure the deal in many different ways, depending on what you are bringing to the table and what the JV partner is bringing to the table, right? So is the JV partner bringing all the investment and the mortgage, then we will be okay with doing a 50-50 split. But if the JV partner is just bringing a portion of the investment and the mortgage, and we are putting a portion of the investment and doing the work and doing everything else, we may do something different. We may go 60-40, or sometimes the other thing that we've done is that we charge a fee for managing the program, right? Because obviously we are going to be doing that. So there is a lot of flexibility. There are a lot of different things. You can be very, very creative, and that's one of the things that we love about rent to owns, that allows us to do many different things. and make it work for both. You're welcome. Yeah.
Regarding your cash flow, so $607, is it including a monthly consideration of payment, which means that your real cash flow is $187 unless you walk away from it?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't get your question.
Yeah, so your cash flow of $687 per month,
Mm-hmm.
is it including the monthly consideration?
Yes, it is.
So the monthly consideration is going towards the down payment.
That's correct.
So if they do end up buying the house, your real cash flow was $187 per month.
No, the cash flow doesn't change. Not sure if I'm following you with your question, but the cash flow doesn't change. Now, the cash flow, yes, it takes into consideration the monthly option money that they are providing. So that's what is typically a little higher than, or much higher than a regular, if this was just a regular rental.
Right, but then if they do buy the house,
Mhm.
the 500 they EV per month is going towards third down payment.
Correct.
So this was your cash flow, unless they walk away, then their real cash flow was $687.
No, it's still the real cash flow because you are taking that in a monthly basis, right? So you take that into consideration in your calculation as to when you are going to sell the house to the person. That money, you take that money out of your I guess you need to give it as a credit. You get a full credit of the initial option consideration plus what they provided in a monthly basis. So you take that into consideration, but your cash flow doesn't change because it's money that you are collecting every month, right? It's money in your pocket, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, okay. So probably one more.
Sorry, just with that. So then let's say your principal recapture could kind of be used to cover that extra.
Absolutely.
And you can use that full cash flow for something else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We use that money, we collect that money, we use that money for other things, right? So the only difference is if as I said earlier, if the house is a relatively old house, you may want to create a contingency fund, a reserve fund, just that you have a little bit of buffer in case a major repair comes up. You may want to do that. You don't have to. We do it, but that's just our practice. And but it's cash flow. Is money in your pocket. You do with that money whatever you want, right? Because you are absolutely right. So that credit comes off of the mortgage pay down and everything else at the end. It's not that you need to give that money back to them. It's coming out of the deal. Okay? Thank you.
Just there is fine. Awesome. That was fantastic. So I just have one final question. I know when people come and there we go. When people come and sit down and they want to talk about rent to own, one of the big questions we get, do you find the property first or do you find the tenants first?
We do both.
You do both.
We do
Okay.
both. Our preference is to do tenant buyer first. That's our preference.
Yeah.
But we've done both, right?
Okay.
So if we end up in a situation where an investor has a rental property that is kind of not working out for them and they want to do a rent to own and release that property, then we do a property first approach. So
Perfect.
it works both ways.
Awesome. So kind of a hybrid. So that's awesome and great to know. One thing to highlight, big thing for people buying an investment property, they're nervous about not having tenants. That they have vacancy a lot. So this, is a creative approach to ensure that you're going to have long-term tenants that are going to take care of their property. Obviously, everything isn't 100% guaranteed, but you're really facilitating that risk and bringing that down. And the last point from his presentation, which is fantastic, is he's doing this as a way to give back. Obviously, there's a way that he and his family can, gain from doing a rent to own, but at the end of the day, it's from his experience and his struggle to get here and do it, and he's, made a system and a business where he can also give back as well. So that's a fantastic way to do business. So another round of applause. Awesome. So again, I want to highlight this form, if you haven't filled it out, please do. It gives us a good idea of what people want to see at Mogul Deal Labs. Okay, so if you see this form, please give it to any of the Mogul crew before you leave. Again, Mogul Deal Lab will be July 9th. It's going to be at 7 p.m. sharp, so please be here a little bit early. And July 9th at the office, 7 p.m. Mark that down in your calendars. It's going to be a great topic. And then another reminder, Mogul Mastermind is always the last Wednesday of the month. It's going to be at Remax, again at this location, 7 p.m. Start coming in around 6:30. Do some networking, meet 2 people. Everybody did a fantastic job of meeting 2 new people. So maybe the challenge will be 3 new people next time. I don't know, can you guys handle it? Okay. That's it for us. Thank you so much for the speakers for coming out, and the people who are newcomers and people who have been here before. Thanks for the support. If you have any questions, we'll be around for a little bit to answer. And that's a wrap. Thanks, guys.